actually speaking in front of live audience and not on Zoom. I'm used to doing things on Zoom. So I'll just start. In a second, I'll introduce myself. I just wanted to kind of introduce my overarching question for this talk, which is this: in a society that values reason above felt sense, how do we learn to trust our gut and regain body sovereignty? So I'm just going to speak for about 20-25 minutes, but in the middle of it, I will do a short demonstration to kind of break the flow of my voice and offer you a little bit of an experiential. And then at the end, there'll be some time for questions. And if you wanted to stay a bit longer, we can do a short meditation practice to get into a little bit of the elements that I work with. My name is Inbar, and I'm a visual artist. I work with photography and I work with videography. And I'm also an embodied psychosomatic coach. Psychosomatic meaning that I use the module that I work with talks about or uses the psychological aspects of our inner world, but it also incorporates it in the body. So it is kind of a conversation between the two. So it's not just a psychological approach, but it is an embodied practice too. And in my work, I support women to connect with themselves, to connect with their bodies and be themselves. And that's because I'm really interested in the sort of conversation and relationship that we have with our bodies. And I'll get into what that means to me a little bit later on. Yeah, and I weave into my body of work. I weave photography, as I said. I use dialogue-based practices and somatic modalities or explorations. So I'm very inspired by things like rolfing, we talked about earlier, and then Feldenkrais method as well as one of my kind of inspirations. Somatic experiencing, so all sorts of models that I take inspiration from and kind of create my body of work with. So in this talk I will demonstrate the practice of embodied awareness as a tool to establish self-trust and regain body sovereignty, and I'll break those down a little bit in a moment. So before I do, I just want to talk about, what is embodiment? We hear it all the time now. If you're on social media, you probably see it everywhere. Embodied this, embodied that. So I just want to talk about what it is for me and how I understand it. And I'll start with the photography element of my work, because that's really how I entered this world that I'm kind of currently occupying. I used to, at the beginning of my photography life, I used to, and I still do in a way, do intimate sessions for women, so nude, etc. And I've noticed an interesting thing that happens in those sessions, whereas we'll have an experience. Hi, I'm sorry, that's all right, come join. No problem. I started by introducing myself, but I'll just continue from where I am. So I'm talking a little bit about embodiment and what it means to me. And to begin with, I still do work with photography, and I found that there is this thing that happens where we have an experience that we feel ourselves or imagine ourselves to look like. And then when you see your photos, or when my clients saw their photos, there was a discrepancy between how they experience themselves or what we had in the session and then what's presented for them. And obviously I'm using my lens, so I'm showing something that I see. But it was also a personal experience of mine that when I look at my own photos, I'm like, ooh, that's like, feels a little bit uncomfortable, like I don't feel like myself. And I found that very interesting, like how does that happen? So it kind of led me into, in a way, to the coaching modality that I trained in. And I have a few observations about that. And again, I'll weave them into my talk. But the embodiment element is, for me, kind of taking that kind of image of self and my body and bringing them closer. Because the sense that I got is that I'm really far away from myself, and sort of how to bring that in. And I think before we started using embodiment as a term for, in the psychological world, embodiment was a thing that actors do, for example. So they research the character, they'll learn about their characteristics, and they'll take it on. and kind of enact it, embody it. But I want to make a distinction that with embodiment, at least for me, it's not about taking something that is external to me and putting that on me. That doesn't open.
Oh, okay, now.
You have to go.
Okay, sorry.
You're trapped. Yeah, so it's not about taking on or wearing a thing. It's more about finding it inside myself and then projecting it outward. So embodiment, it is, or embodied awareness, which is the kind of overarching theme of my work or what I'm interested in. I feel like there are qualities within my core that I can access. There are different practices that I use to access those, and these qualities are what I beam out. So I live within my body and the quality of self that I inhabit. So back to my question. In a society that values reason above felt sense, so I just want to break that down a little bit. Why do I say value reason? I feel that we are, the tendency in our society is to kind of cut ourselves here. The way that we experience our mind that's the most important thing. You even see it in our language, like the head of, like a CEO is the head of a department or a head teacher, whatever. We always extend and inflate with our language anyone who's like above me. So that's, and also, that's one element of it. And then from our kind of development as infants, we come into the world. We obviously have our parents that parent us and teach us things. So we're always in kind of the way we experience the world initially is that we are we're learning, right? And we have people to guide us, so they're above us, so they're ahead of us. And then we go into the education system, and again, it's a similar system where there's teachers and they know more, and I learn from them, and so I'm always kind of lower somehow. And then once you kind of reach adulthood, again, we have these systems, government systems that are in place to kind of govern us and which kind of direct what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. So we never really ever arrive at a space where we are governing ourselves. So I think as a society, this is my own personal interpretation, and of course there's good and bad in everything. But my interpretation is that we are we never really reach a sort of adulthood and sovereignty in our grown-up lives. So in this practice, there is really like this kind of reclaiming of self, and why so that feeling that we sort of value it more than anything that we feel, and the feel link is in the body, the way I understand it in the somatic terms, so that our body is where we sense, we feel, where we live. We can have a spiritual experience that is in the head, but how do we kind of bring it down to our body and really inhabit and embody our experience and live our lives. So yes, so that is then kind of ties in with the how do we trust our gut, like how do we find contact and connection with our intuition and what we really know as people, because we have all these influences that are outside of us, but how do we kind of decide for ourselves what is for me, what isn't for me, what do I know in my core, right? So that's really interesting for me personally, and I think if we want for a kind of a mature and an equal level adulthood or maturity, I think for us to start to begin to know ourselves as equal and as mature beings, I think there are practices that we can do, and for me that's like reclaiming. So, what is embodied awareness? And here I'm going to do a little demonstration. Just break down a little bit. We have awareness. I talked a little bit about that being in the head and this kind of like external something that is outside of me. I think there's quite a few practices that offer us awareness now, mindfulness if you practice it, and all sorts of things that we can do to bring awareness. But embodied awareness has a different tone to it, and it is really something that we kind of feel in the body. So I wanted to demonstrate it so you can have a little appreciation. It's really very short. So if you wanted to, you're already sitting down, so place your hands on your thighs, something that feels comfortable. And for a moment, relax into that posture. If it feels available, you can close your eyes, but you really don't have to. And I'm just going to invite you to bring awareness to your hands and how they touch your body, how they're resting on your thighs. You might notice if the temperature, if they're hot or cold. You might notice their a contraction or a relaxed hand. Just bring in awareness to your hands. And you might even notice that you're kind of noticing your hands. So you are almost looking at your hands from above somewhere. And then I'm just going to invite you to inhabit your hands. So that instruction means that you kind of enter the space within your hands as if you live there. You are the hands, you are your hands. Just noticing the difference in sensation, if it's available. And when you're ready, come back and open your eyes. It was just a short demonstration to just notice the difference, and I'm very curious if you felt it. There was a sensation, It's like an outer layer that we're aware of, and then it's like, these are my hands. So it becomes intentional. So anything so when I touch something, I do it with intention. It's not an accident, so it's meaningful. So that touches my heart a lot, actually. So if we bring all of that in, there's an element that's that I'm drawing back my power and these qualities that belong to me. So I don't project them outward to the external world, but rather I am them. For me, embodied awareness, this is an umbrella term. There are different practices that I use, and one particular one that builds foundations. It is a meditation practice. So for me, this kind of inhabiting of the body is this tool to return to a body. As I said, like drawing back these qualities, re-establish a relationship and trust within the system, and create foundations for wholeness. But the system that I'm talking about is really this nervous system. So it's the body, the nerve endings that really reach everywhere. And in the fascia conversation we had earlier, we also learned that the nerve endings extend into the fascia and work with it. So it's malleable. This is something that we can change, and with this awareness and with this inhabiting, embodied awareness, we can create these, we can start to kind of melt and dissolve different contractions in the body by bringing awareness downward. Just gonna check my notes quickly if I said everything I wanted to say about this. Thanks for joining us. You've missed the first chunk. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the reasons why we stay in our heads. And maybe I've already kind of mentioned it in a way, but yes, there is that idea that we are kind of cut here, and we all do it. So there is a sense that's like, if everyone's like this, well, I'm just going to be the same. And we don't have a lot of examples where we are not cut like this. So there is a preference to it too. And then that once we start to go into the body with our awareness, or we drop in the body, there is an emotional component to that. The way I understand the body, or the emotional body, is that it lives in the spaces, for lack of a better word, our body. So it's a somatic, there is a somatic expression. So when we experience pain, or when we experience heartbreak, we've all had heartbreaks, probably. So once that happens, there's a contraction or a protection that we kind of put on, and that is that can be structural as well. So anything that it has impacted us emotionally from our life, but also any explicit trauma, any surgery, any accident that happens, that all has an impact on the kind of tissue layers of our body. And so for me, with awareness and the practice of awareness and inhabiting the body, there's a dissolving of that occurs. So the fascia that is contracted or held in a certain pattern can kind of find more space and relax. So yeah, these are kind of this protection moment that happens, or it can be sometimes that we have, like if we're feeling that we don't have a lot of power, like there's a pain that can happen here, or sometimes we'll feel a contraction in our throat when we can't speak, or numbness in our pelvis. I work with women, so there are parts of our body that we just don't have access to. So to start to bring awareness there and access that does mean that we're going through an emotional kind of journey with it. So this is a practice of wholeness because it's multi-layered, but what happens really is that once you start doing that, once you start kind of dropping from the mind and really allowing yourself to feel yourself, there's a sense of relief that comes with it. Like a breath, when you're taking a deep breath and it's like, oh yeah, I'm here, or you're taking 5 minutes for yourself to sit down and just close your eyes and not look at the external world. So there's a sense of relief, which is really precious. So how can we kind of, elongate that, or create more space for it? And then there is like this kind of element of parenting myself. So when I go through these places in my body that have an emotional component, how do I start to care for those? So I, in a way, become a mature being, and I care for myself. So that immediately puts me in a more equal to those kind of higher levels of authority, if you like. So there's a maturity and an equalness that happens with this practice that I myself really I've noticed a lot of difference since I've started doing this. There's also the intentionality that I spoke about, and it was like, these are my hands. Now that I'm touching this, it's meaningful. So whoever and whatever I touch and however I'm engaging in the world is really from a space that I'm doing that with awareness. I am in my body, and it's not something that I've projected outward. And it's not an image that was put on me. It's really something that I start to kind of feel within my system. So if you take that idea of the lens, I'm working with photography. So instead of just like kind of projecting outward this thing, or having people project onto us ideas, we really change the lens, we bring it in, and we start to find it within ourselves, so then we can just express it with our intention or energy or being. There is a kind of a layering thing that happens. So one thing is that we claim back our kind of power and qualities within ourselves, and the other that we start dissolving these contractions, these holding patterns, if you will. So there is a wholeness in that. There is a coming home experience that I think is very precious. That is really the end of my talk. So my invitation to you is just check in with yourselves. How is it? How far away from yourself do you feel? If we're using that image, that photograph thing that I talked about earlier, like when you look at a photo of yourself, how close or far do you feel from that person you're looking at? And what are the ways in which that you can start to bring those closer? And what are the gifts in doing that, so that you start to really claim and really own and become the person that you are. Thank you. This should be Sorry, it was worth it.
Yeah, the few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you joined us.
I just took that picture of that tree.
Oh yeah.
That reminds me
Of the tree.
Yeah,
Let's put it.
yeah, it's beautiful, that picture.
Thank you.
It tells you a lot, you know, it's us.
Right. Yes.
This is us, our roots. We have to be grounded.
Grounded. So this
to
is
actually feel good, to realise.
I like this image a lot because the groundedness that we can feel groundedness in our body. This is the practice of grounding.
It's a biblical thing.
I wanted to just open the space before everybody goes. There is, if you wanted to ask questions, I'm really happy to answer them. And then the invitation was also there. We can do a little meditation practice just to experience the kind of body. Yes.
I stay for the meditation then.
Yeah. Did anybody want to ask something before we go into
I was going to ask a confession. I often find when I have so many aches and pains that if I think to myself, oh, I'll go inside my body, I come across a pain.
Yeah.
And I find that very limiting then. It stops me. Is there a trick to get over it, or how do you work through that, you know?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I understand that very much, that if there's a pain in the body, whenever I'm asked to kind of go within, that pain just becomes like the loudest thing in the room. So there isn't a trick, but I think there is a practice that I work with. It's called the realization process, and it sort of goes back and beyond. So it offers, and let's try with this meditation. So the offer is to firstly build foundations of safety and trust within the system. So I'm not going where it hurts or where it pains, but rather finding more pleasure paths. So when you do end up, finding a meditation pose, for example, and you're closing your eyes and you're going with it, focusing more where it feels available, where I feel there is space for me to enter.
So going round the pain or sidestepping it.
Right, so I wouldn't go to the pain because of course then you'd want to just like leave and go away, of course. So we really want to focus on what is actually available. So for example, we're going to start now with just inhabiting the feet the same way we've inhabited the hands. How did it feel, by the way, when we inhabited the hands?
Tingly and
Was that
bigger than I thought they were actually?
Right.
I thought they were little hands, but they were quite big.
I love that, that's really
Yeah, I couldn't get out of my head. It was stuck up here.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens
For
with
the hands. Yeah. Yeah, so we'll do just the feet, I think, and then maybe build up a little bit more. But yes, for you and for anyone who's experiencing pain in their body, really focusing on where. Try to find where there is pleasure. This is how I work. I work with the pleasure component rather than the pain. And I think the pleasure is like any other kind of birthright quality for joy and love. This is something that it's a quality that we already have in our bodies, and we have that capacity to feel. So it's really accessible. But the volume of the pain is so much higher that it's hard to find the kind of subtlety. But it's practice. That's another thing. That it's called a practice for a reason. It's really about coming back and returning and doing it as little as possible sometimes, creating more. Creating more space really for experiencing more.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really one of the reasons also we just avoid meditating.
Yeah.
I myself also, meditation was always something that's like happening up here, and it almost feels disassociative. So once I found the embodied awareness practice and adding the body component to my meditation, so it's more grounding and really stabilizing, and then building from there up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, people are ready? Any more questions? So yeah, take a seat. Let me just take a drink of water. Find a posture that feels really comfortable. So I think that's really important. When I started the meditation practice, I built it up 5 minutes at a time, and I started lying down because sitting was just not available for me. Another thing is that, again, we think that we must close our eyes, but sometimes it's just not available. So it's really okay to keep your eyes open. I think creating safety is the most important thing before we go in. So yeah, finding a really restful pose. And if you're at home, I've even put like a lot of cushions around, just finding really a relaxing pose. Yeah.
Can I have a cushion, please?
Yes, go like that. Yeah. So yeah, if it is available for you, close your eyes. And if not, leave them open until it does. And just soften your gaze. We're just going to breathe a little bit here. And you don't have to change your breath. Just notice how you're breathing. Taking a deep breath in, just letting one go. I'm going to start with the feet. So just bring awareness to the bottom part of your body and your feet. And when you're ready, inhabit your feet. So you kind of step into your feet. You become the space of your feet. We'll spend a little time there just to notice how that feels. And if your awareness sort of bubbles up, back up to your head or out, it's okay. You can let it do that and start again. Or you can let it go entirely. Just see if it's available to enter and inhabit your feet. And there is a sensation that happens when you do that. It's like you're wearing your feet as gloves and you feel up the space. There's a feeling of descent, but notice your structure. So you are sitting down, you are being supported by the chair. So just want to remind us that we are here and the body is being supported. So really feeling the gravity and relaxing into the chair that supports you. Going up into the knees, inhabiting the knees, however that might feel in this moment. So you are the space within your knees. And again, noticing that sort of gravity that happens and finding the chair that supports your posture. So it's almost like the ground is coming up and you're going down, and there's a nice balance that happens. So we're creating roots. bringing awareness to the heaviness of the structure and this kind of junction point between almost heaven and earth. So the legs being the earth and the roots, and the pelvis being this junction point before. Just sitting, and if it's available, you can inhabit your pelvis very subtly in a subtle mind, just with a lot of care and tenderness there. Just noticing if it's available. And the sensations of being this low in your body. Creating ground. And allowing, allowing this relaxation, the rest of you. A sinking and a drop. And sort of everything collects and is supported by the structure of your chair and the structure of your bones. And if you have your eyes closed, and if it's hard to, if you'd like to kind of quiet a little bit the mind, you can rest your thinking mind in the bottom of your torso, so within the pelvis structure. So there's a movement that happens from the head that goes inwards and back and down. We're doing that with a lot of care. So finding that pleasure path, your awareness dropping from the mind and into internal space of your body, into your pelvis, and being really held and supported when you do that. So your awareness, it travels down and into the ground, and it dissolves in the waves. So there is a pleasure element to that dissolving that you can feel. And maybe it's a small, very subtle change to a layer. Maybe it's very deep. Maybe just relaxing. So if you find this relaxing and pleasurable space to be, you can stay there for a little bit longer. And when you're ready, take your time slowly. You can start moving a little bit. You can move your hands on your legs, maybe wiggle your toes, and just start to awaken the body back. And trying to maintain that sense of connection from within. And then kind of remembering that pathway where it felt available, where it felt comfortable, as you open your eyes and come back to this space.
I've got 2 inches taller.
Did you feel it?
My spine.
Oh, that's lovely.
I find myself getting up and up and up. My shoulders were down
Right.
when I first started. I started to sort of not quite tinkle, not ache, but in between. It does. It makes you feel elevated, doesn't it?
Because you've created
Yes.
grounding
It's too
and
much
support.
weight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Do you know that?
I feel like, I experience it too. Once I've created the sort of foundations in the ground of where I'm supported and my point of contact also, I'm not dissolving into anything. I can then grow like the tree, like the tree image, or like a sprout, sprout.
Yes, and you mentioned heaven, heaven and earth. I could have said, heaven is my head, earth is my feet, and it is something in between here and there.
Yeah.
And that also makes you sort of
Yeah.
stretch, grow, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and in society also we have that like, I
Yes.
want to go up there,
Yes.
but like
One
actually
of
we're here.
One of the Superman is doing
Yeah.
it, he wants to be up there.
Yeah, yeah,
It's that image, exactly. It's Superman is up there.
yeah, I love that. But yeah, I mean, we're having a human experience, right? So we might as well embrace the fact that we have a body and that it can feel and sense and has all these kind of, all these components to it that we can work with. I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if we go through life without experiencing what it means to have a body. Yeah.
Well, you're still here.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
How was it for you?
It was lovely. It was,
Yeah?
It's, sitting down's nice for me. You know, I quite like to sit.
Yeah.
I don't know, I do like sitting
I
down.
like
but-
sitting.
Have you been to the other talk when the guy was talking about
He's here.
the fascia? Him? Yeah. He's not good sitting down.
No, I know.
I mean,
One thing I'm good at.
He's still here.
No, it was lovely. Got a lovely voice, actually. It's quite a nice voice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For a guided meditation, sometimes voices can be very irritating, but
Yeah.
yours is a lovely voice, so
Yeah.
it was quite nice to, and it's quite uplifting actually, which is quite nice as well. So I like a guided meditation because I do tend to wander,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
so it's quite nice for a guided one to bring you back. So
Yeah, and why I like this practice is because it's guiding you into yourself.
yes,
Not into some imaginary world of
No.
waterfalls, which is beautiful.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true, yeah.
But it does offer you, really to find that within you. That is a quality that belongs to you and is in your system already. You are the waterfall.
yeah. Well, no, but when you're in pain, you do avoid your body.
Right.
You try and get out of it, and I see what you mean by coming back into it and being present in it, really. Which if you're angry with your body because it's not working properly or it's in pain or whatever, then you can try and avoid it and you go about your business without even connecting with it. So so it's a lovely. I like the idea. It sounds,
It's really great.
Yeah.
Sorry that those doors don't open. You have to go from the other way. Yeah, I think this practice really offers a different way of
Yes.
experiencing the body by bringing the awareness that the body contains. Please, the body is the flesh and the fascia stores information. We talked about it earlier. It stores information and sometimes traumatic and painful information. So really going very gently with that and finding another route in.
Yes.
And building stability first too. I think it's really important than just going in where the pain is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. It's very nice.
Thank you. I have my cards here, so if you wanted to connect with me, I do all
Right,
sorts of
sorry,
things.
I think you just didn't have to worry.
No, please take them. Yeah. And if you have any more questions, I'd love